the world and show the progress and also show the depth of the creator community that exists on Spotify. So I was super excited to share that, and it's been fun to see over the course of the day all the reactions from the community and everyone else around it.
So one thing I love about the creator economy is remix culture and the fact that everybody can kind of weigh in. They don't need to have all the creativity. They can just add a caption or a new spin on a joke. And I feel like you guys have actually been the subject of a fair amount of memes, maybe you in particular, Mark, between your Capitol Hill appearances and e-foiling on that cool surfboard of yours. Mark, do you have any sort of response to the memes that you see about you, or is there a favorite one of yours?
I don't know. I don't take it too seriously. I mean, I think probably if I had to go with a favorite, I think it's got to be smoking meats. I mean, I do love grilling and cooking, and that was silly, and I appreciate that everyone enjoys it.
Yeah, I think that one's adorable. And you and your Sweet Baby Ray's hot sauce, I feel like if you ever quit your job as Facebook CEO, you have a great sponsorship deal lined up for them. Okay, so one thing that I wanted to tie into the creator economy is the NFT culture, which is on the massive rise right now. And for that, we did something a little bit special today. I had this idea of wanting to do live portraits of the speakers that come on our show, Press Club. And so I want to present you guys with a portrait that I worked on with my incredible friend Finch, an absolutely amazing painter. And if you click on Finch, who's on the screen right now, you'll see this portrait that he has made specially for you guys right now, featuring you in his iconic honey bear style. Would love to have Finch just say hi and talk about it for 1 second.
Hi there. Thank you so much. So yeah, I'm a street artist in San Francisco, and I focus mainly on public art, but we also do fine art. This collab is the first NFT that I'm going to do. Josh just invited me to do an artwork for this event, and I don't do human portraiture, but I paint a lot of honey bears, and so I made a honey bear for Mark, Daniel, and Toby. You can see the digital version of my profile, and then I'm actually going to live paint an actual canvas that will come with the NFT throughout the event. And then I really wanted to thank all three of you for your work. I'm a creator, obviously. I run my entire business through Shopify, everything from inventory to shipping. It's really all centered there. And then I use Instagram really extensively. It's where all the visual artists hang out and share their work. And then I love music like a lot of people. So thank you all so much.
That's awesome.
This is so cool.
Yeah, I've followed your work for a while, and I just love the style of what you're doing. I have to say though, Daniel, do you actually play guitar?
Yeah, I do. So this was pretty fitting. I love the work too. So this is great. I'm gonna try to see if I can get the NFT version of this one for sure.
Yeah, is this a reference to the Silicon Valley honey bear scene?
I actually haven't watched the show. I found that it hit too close to home, and so.
Yeah, I might have an advantage being in Canada. I can look at it from a distance. But, okay.
Amazing.
Super
Finch,
cool.
I just want to thank you so much for doing this work. If you guys are interested in this work, we just put the NFT up for auction on foundation.app. The link's in my profile and Finch's profile, and we're giving 20% to the US COVID Relief Fund from Give Directly, which is one of our favorite charities that really does incredible work in making sure that money makes an impact. So yeah, check that out. We'll be talking about it a little bit later at the end of the show. But thanks again, Finch. But I want to get into our big real topic, the creator economy. You guys are powering these platforms where so many creators have built their audience, starting to monetize their audience. I would love to just get like a quick overview, that big picture vision of why you think the creator economy is blowing up right now and what this means for culture. Mark, do you want to kick us off?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so, I think we all kind of hope that in the future, the economy is one where everyone can pursue their interests and their creativity and can have jobs that are more exciting for them. So the question is just, how do you build up the economic models to basically support all of that? And, I'm really excited to hear what Daniel and Toby have to say too. But, a lot of this is, there are going to be a lot of tools that need to get built. The creator economy goes across, all of these different types of content, right? So it's not just musicians and people who are creating videos and online content, but I think a lot of journalism and long form writing fits into this. A lot of gaming, I think, increasingly fits into this. To some extent, there's a lot of physical goods and creativity that people are able to enable and start businesses around. I mean, one of my favorite little kind of stories from throughout the pandemic is, there's this restaurant that I loved in San Francisco, and during COVID, they basically transitioned their business model to a dumpling subscription service. And it's like, all right, it's super creative, and the tools for being able to supply this, are basically being built on the internet by a bunch of these platforms, and I think it's just really exciting. And when Daniel, your keynote recently, you talked about this goal to basically be able to get support. I think it was 1 million people, right, who are creators, full-time jobs on Spotify. And I think if we can kind of all do that together, so musicians can do that, but also small business creators coming up with creative different ideas, create new business models around journalism and long form writing, videos, people doing all kinds of different entertainment. I just think that this is so important for having a broad-based and stable economy that's inspiring over time. And that's a lot of what we've been excited about. I mean, it's I talk a lot about small businesses and Facebook. We have about 200 million businesses that use our products. The vast majority of them are small businesses who use our products for free. We don't have an exact accounting yet of how many creators, in addition to the small businesses, are on the platforms, but we think it's probably around a similar amount. That's people who are basically, using, it's like their personality is their brand, and they're using these services in order to either grow their influence or monetize their community and as a job. And I think over the coming years, it will have to evolve so that way a large percent of these folks can basically make a full-time living through this. And I think that that's just going to be super inspiring.
That's awesome. Yeah, I think the idea of helping people turn their passion into their profession is so critical, because there's a lot of people that don't want to have a traditional office job anymore. And when you ask, I think it's like 30% of elementary school kids say they want to be influencers. It's beaten out being like an astronaut or a fireman. And I think that that's a really important and pretty sizable shift in, not just popular culture, but like where we see ourselves in terms of occupations. Daniel, would love to hear your sort of bigger picture thoughts on the creator economy right now.
Yeah, this is something we talked about just very recently, like Mark spoke about too. And our view, just in the space of audio, just a few years ago, we had about 3 million creators on our platform. And today, that number is over 8 million. And we've said by 2025, we think it will grow to about 50 million creators. So just the explosion of the people who want to be creative and who are expressing themselves through music, through podcasting, through audio is just staggering. And what's fascinating to me, as we spoke about, is this notion about making it so that more of these people can live off of their passion and live off of their art that they're creating. And what's interesting, I feel, is that it's very much of an omni-channel expression by these creators. So it used to be before that if you were a musician, as an example, you just put out music. That was kind of the thing that you were doing. But almost every successful creator now is omni-talented and in omni-channels. That means that they are on YouTube putting up videos, they are on Instagram, they are perhaps putting together brands and putting it on Shopify, but they're also putting out music and merchandise on Shopify and music on Spotify, of course, and touring. And so they're really just doing a multitude of different things and connecting with their fan bases across many different platforms. And so I think it's a super, super interesting early stage, but there's a lot of friction still of being a creator and managing your fan base across all of these different platforms that I think will be considerably easier in the coming years. Um, and even this distinction between sort of what a casual fan is and what a super fan is, I think will dramatically change in the coming years.
I think musicians have historically made a lot of their money from those biggest fans, the ones willing to buy those front row ticket packages, those like collector's items, signed guitars. Would love to hear maybe, Daniel, just quickly how you think about Spotify letting creators and musicians drive that deeper monetization, because a fraction of a cent per stream, it adds up at a big amount, but every creator has some super loyal hardcore fans that would love to get behind them in an even bigger way. I know you guys have started to sell merch and concert tickets, but any thoughts on going deeper there around meet and greets, live events, or anything like that?
Yeah, I mean, I think we're still in the early days of creating a more and deeper fan engagement between creators and fans, and it's definitely a sort of big theme that we're investing behind. And as you said, I think when I kind of look at streaming, the early innings was all about just access, just having access to the content and moving more and more of these minutes that was being spent in traditional offline radio or broadcast radio onto online on demand. And as more and more people now have started doing that, and we have hundreds of millions of people around the world that are streaming music every single day, the engagement profile means that we are creating a lot of fans, and we're creating a lot of super fans too. So far, music has been sort of a one size fits all, where we've just monetized it through the streaming revenues in itself. And you had to, as a creator, figure out how to monetize that fan base off of other platforms. But I think the future is that we will become a lot better at monetizing your fans and your super fans, even on Spotify. And I like to think and hope that platforms like Shopify and others can then interact with Spotify, and likewise, you can have Spotify content be on Instagram or Facebook in order to kind of drive that 360 experience.
Yeah, I think that mirrors exactly what Signalfire, the venture fund where I work, we did this big research project, and what we found was that over 50 million people are now starting to make money off of their creations. But one of the biggest trends there is people moving their fans off of the biggest social platforms and onto things like Shopify. Toby, would love to hear your opinion on sort of how that trend is playing out now, as fans don't, or as creators don't just want likes or clicks, they want actual profits and to be able to support themselves with their passion.
Yeah, Josh, I think I think it's overstated that people make like a choice or want to move people from one place to another. Like, well, look, I think I've been really inspired by. This is like an older reference. Like Kevin Kelly wrote an essay about it's titled "1,000 True Fans," maybe 15 years ago or something like that. And I find that's really, it's such a wonderful vision for the internet. I tend to think of the internet as the biggest city in the world, right? Like with now billions of people on it. And I think what Daniel is doing so successfully, and other websites are doing well, and Instagram and all these other things. It's just it allows people like to find their these 1,000 fans, right? It and do so directly, and I think that's a very different that's a very different environment than what was before. Like in the retail world, we've always had a lot of gatekeeping, right? There was limited shelf space just meant that a lot of choices had to be made, which meant that the kinds of products that were created had to be very, very, very sanitized, very broad appeal for just logistical reasons, right? And so I think what's been so amazing is now that just a lot more people can participate, and what you see is just much more specific products are being created. Because it's so efficient to find the people who are really like the things that you have to offer. And what's interesting in this way is that almost all the people that I'm talking to, you're right, they're doing this very multi-channel, but they're going direct through each of these channels. They manage to figure out where the people want the particular thing that they're making, and this is such a positive sum situation. It creates these businesses. It creates employment, especially if people manage to find more than 1,000 true fans, and it's a huge factor for economy. It's super exciting, and it's a lot more participatory than I think what's come before, and I think that's really exciting.
And one thing that I'd add is, I think that people want a lot of different ways that they can basically monetize and support themselves off of their art or whatever the work is that they're doing. So it's important that people have all of these tools. Artists are going to want to directly monetize their art through things like Spotify. They'll want tools to be able to give fans more specific access. They'll want to do basically sell merch and different goods, either that they create or that they curate. And that's where all the commerce stuff comes in. And you see that not only on Shopify, but also in the commerce work that we're doing, and a lot of that we're doing in partnership with Shopify. But you're also seeing stuff like tipping online. I mean, we have this product, Stars, that basically just allows people to tip game streamers on Facebook who they like, and that's been it's kind of contributed to Facebook having much more effective monetization for game streamers than I think any of the other leading platforms out there. So a lot of game streamers are coming over to our tools for that. And it's just kind of interesting because I think overall it's not like one model is going to work. It's not just like everyone is going to be able to make enough money off of an ads revenue share or something like that. But I think the 360 view of having all of these things really is going to support tens of millions of people in order to be able to do these kind of creative pursuits and just do amazing stuff. I can wrap there.
Definitely. If you guys in the audience want to chat with other users and listeners here, you can go to constine.club and join the second screen chat conversation. We'd love to see what you guys are thinking about this. Mark, I wanted to rewind. So you guys have been around for 15 years now. If you guys are more now, if you go back in time 10 years and think about how you were working with creators then, is there anything that you would change?
Well, I think we have a somewhat different kind of heritage of how we got here, right? If you take a company like Daniel's, you've been working with artists from the beginning, right? Or Toby, you've been working with businesses and commerce from the beginning. We started off as a social platform to help people connect, and basically we've helped to build this pretty vast community. And now the numbers of people who are small businesses who are using the platform, or creators who are using the platform, I mean, even if those were the only people we were serving, I mean, that's more than enough to build a kind of major company by itself, even without all the other social use cases and billions of people doing that. So now we just want to make sure that we're putting in and doing really good world-class work on this, and to make sure that we're kind of doing our part to support all these different use cases. And a lot of what we're trying to do is work with companies that are 100% dedicated to these things. So, I mean, we've had a long-term partnership with Spotify and a number of things around music, and I think that there will be an opportunity to do a lot more there. It was about a year ago, I think, Toby, I mean, correct me if I'm getting the dates wrong, that we announced, our partnership and launched Facebook Shops. And I think the progress on that, it's still obviously early, but we now have more than 1 million active shops and more than 250 million people actively interacting with those shops every month. So, I think the progress in terms of being able to ramp up some of this stuff and just kind of all the different tools that now exist, it's really amazing. I think that the next 5 years are going to be really explosive in terms of the potential across a lot of these verticals. And I mean, by the way, the numbers that I shared, I don't actually think I've shared them before, but it's I'm really proud of the progress that we've made there. And I don't know, Toby, how do you think that's going?
It's really great progress. And again, I think what's important here is the way these business models work and how they shape the world. I think this sort of positive sumness of what Daniel's doing for artists is very quickly overlooked, or often overlooked, right? Because there's a lot more people who will be able to make a living as artists because of what Spotify is doing. There's a lot more people who can start their own businesses, for especially very, very niche businesses, because of the efficiency that like now exists to be able to create these businesses and then find their audiences. It almost feels like there was a buildup of infrastructure that we've done on the internet for the last 20 years, which just somehow just about was like good enough. Maybe a little bit janky around the sides, but with COVID happening and so many people having to look for another way of sustaining themselves, like that dumpling business you talked about, we just about had all the infrastructure there that allowed people, even non-technical people, to go and take their businesses into this amazing city that is the internet, and that's really, really important.
We'd love to hear you guys talk a little bit more about why this is important to the U.S. economy. Like, why does having a creator set, people who are making their money independently, why is that great for a more robust economy?
I think just let me speak for the SMB space just for a second. Like a lot of people work for small businesses, right? Like it's depending on where you get the numbers from, it's like 50 to sometimes 80% in international cases. Definitely more than half of people work for small businesses, but that's not a stable group, right? Like it's small businesses go out of business a lot. For lots of reasons. Right? Obviously, restaurants are part of it, which have famously high turnover rate. But in general, they go out of business a lot. The reason why it still works and why it provides so much of employment is because there's a lot of new ones that are being created as well. It's generally a leaky bucket that's being refilled, hopefully at the same rate or faster. It actually hasn't been true in the last while, like for the last couple of years. It's now the last, I think 18 months, for the first time it's picked up again, that new business formation has picked up as a number. Again, this is about a lot about friction. It was just very, very hard. Unless you had a technical background, you were probably not going to be a retailer a decade ago, 10 years ago, right? Like it just didn't work. Like I could only do it because I'm a programmer. And that's an unnecessary restriction, and working really hard to build companies that make it more participatory and create better equality of opportunities for people who want to start businesses or want a direct connection with their fans and all these things. That took a while to build.
Yeah, I also think one of the things that I'm most excited about here is just the idea of better representation for a wider set of creators. Traditionally, when you had to go through these big mainstream media platforms to reach fans, you kind of had to boil everything down to this lowest common denominator and make this one size fits all content. And it seems like now, because you don't have to make something that's fit for the radio, on Spotify, you could just make something that's fit for 1,000 people who love your very unique, quirky style, or a game streamer that streams an old retro game that most people don't play anymore, or a Shopify seller that sells something that most people don't need, but a few people just absolutely love. I feel like that's awesome, because it means that every niche gets its star, like every subculture gets somebody that represents it. And then you end up with more people who can look up to that stage and say, oh, I see somebody who looks like me, who talks to the things I care about. Maybe I could become that kind of person too.
Yeah, I think that's super important. And also, I do want to highlight that this is very much a global phenomenon too. So, you know, it's certainly prevalent and it's very large in the US economy. But for me, the exciting part is the fact, if you just talk about music, how you have, if you just take Latam as a great example right now, J Balvin is now one of the largest artists in the world. It would have been unthinkable to think about a Colombian artist breaking out on the world stage. It only happened once prior that I'm aware of, and that's Shakira. And now you've had a ton of them, and you have a music genre called reggaeton that's now a um, uh, global thing that people all over the world care about. And for me, that is sort of the ultimate promise of the internet. And I think there's been a lot of great things that have been said before about sort of this isn't about just advertising or just about subscription, but it's actually the future will be about finding your audience and finding multiple ways of interacting with that audience across all of these different platforms, finding multiple ways of monetizing them from when they are a casual user to all the way up to a super fan. And as I think about the future and I think about automation and all of the things that will probably displace a lot of the jobs that we have as well, one of the major trends have been that people are turning towards more creative and more creative endeavors. And I like to think that's very positive for society, and I like to think that that's ultimately very positive too for the future of the economy. That we are able to go to sort of um, expression, belonging, and connect with people on deeper cultural level.
Yeah, and Josh, going back to your point before about why this is important for the overall economy, I think that, you know, if you look country by country, you can measure the strength and stability of different countries' economies by the vibrancy and kind of number of small businesses that they have. You know, for all the attention that gets paid to the stock market and kind of the biggest companies, I think that this is where the majority of employment is, and the majority of the work that's going on in the economy. So I think it's whether it's creators or small businesses. I think yeah, I mean, this is really important for kind of overall health and prosperity around the world. And one of the most important trends I think on the internet is that you basically are giving all these individuals the power to do things that historically only larger enterprises would have had, right? So I mean, Toby was talking about this before in terms of, all right, he couldn't have gotten started, you know, with his initial shop unless he was an engineer. But you know, now you don't even need to be able to code to create an awesome online presence doing this. And you know, we see this in things like marketing. You know, where it used to be that if you wanted to reach your audience in the way that Daniel's saying, you know, you would have had to have been a big company doing pretty sophisticated analytics and marketing. And, you know, if you were you know, the woman doing the dumpling delivery service that I was talking about before, you know, there were just that just wouldn't have been accessible. There's no way that she has an analytics team, right? That can figure out who are the people who are likely to want to subscribe to her dumpling service. That's just wasn't going to happen. But now you basically have these platforms that level the playing field a bit and make it so that you can grow a more vibrant sector of creators and small businesses. And I think that that's one of the most important things that's happening on the internet right now.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I think that what we're seeing in SignalFire's big creator economy report, we just found that creators are having to become founders. They have to cobble together both tools and teams to be able to support themselves, because you can't just be a guitarist anymore. You have to be a data scientist, a growth hacker, a merchandise designer, a community manager, and you probably can't actually do that all yourself, nor can you do that all manually. And so you really need the support of these tools. I'm also really excited about the finance element of this. I think we're going to see more around helping creators get off to a good start even before they're maybe self-sustainable with their own creation. You know, we funded a company called Carrot, which is a credit card for influencers, so they can fund their video production or their content creation before they get that ad revenue share or that sponsorship money. And I think that supporting creators right from the start with financing is really important. And Mark, I know that Facebook is building a newsletter product, and there's been discussion of whether it's going to take a cut of that newsletter products revenue. You know, I would love to hear if you could talk any more about that, and both in the sense of if Facebook's going to take a cut, but maybe even if Facebook would provide a stipend to help creators get started on Facebook's newsletter product.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to get ahead of the team that's working on this and is going to announce it soon, but I think people will be happy with what we're doing here. our goal is to basically build tools across these different categories where people are doing creative and intellectual work that give very favorable economics. And so that's not just on the side of revenue share and things like that, but it's also just having very good monetization tools. So that way, over time, I think we should be able to build a lot of the tools that give people the broadest audience. But even while that's ramping up, I think that we should be able to give people the ability to have more monetization per person who's in their audience. So that's certainly something that we're looking at. I mentioned it in game streaming before, for journalists and long form writers as well. I just think that there's so much to do there.
Mark, I know that you mentioned any more like the commerce stats or things that you guys are working on now. Just wanted to see if there was anything more you had to share there on that news.
No, I mean, I'm pretty excited about the potential of where this is going. I mean, we're, I think, a little less than a year in and having 1 million active shops and 250 million people using them actively. I think it's just good progress. I mean, I think it's still early compared to where it's going, but I think, and Toby, I'm curious to get your view on this, but compared to the early conversations we had about how people would use this across Facebook and Instagram and our products, I just think that this is well on track to being something that's going to be increasingly important to people. And in the last year, I've been proud of the impact that we've been able to have because obviously we've had this dynamic where a lot of physical storefronts have been closed. So just making sure that people can continue to sell things on the internet has been very important for the health of these businesses.
Yeah, no, progress has been really, really good. And it's an exciting product. It's again, it will increase there will be more people participating in commerce. There's going to be more people supporting themselves. It's more people who start new businesses and more people will employ others because of it, which is the positive sum of this is extremely important. I think it'll do a lot of that for that. We'll certainly, obviously, we're looking into the numbers as well, and talking to our customers who are testing it and using it, and they love it. So that's really great.
Okay, so this sort of brings up this other topic that I wanted to talk about, which is the idea of how the app store policies and the mobile economy and how different players apply taxes or privacy changes really impacts these kind of small businesses and the advertising that they rely on, or the microtransactions and tipping and subscriptions that could really fund some of these creators. Apple's starting to change a lot of these policies, with the new iOS 14 changes to ad identifier tracking, as well as their ongoing subscription fees, as well as microtransaction fees. It seems like those would make it kind of hard for you guys to be able to continue to offer these kind of services to small businesses. Would love to hear how do you feel about those changes coming in?
Well, there's a lot to say about this, but I mean, I would separate out, the impact to kind of our businesses as platforms compared to the impact to individuals and small businesses who, before some of these changes, I think, we're moving towards having the same kind of tools that previously only bigger companies would have had, and this imperils that. So, when it comes to, the iOS 14 changes, for example, and their impact on our business, I think the reality is that I'm confident that we're going to be able to manage through that situation well. And we'll be in a good position. I think it's possible that we may even be in a stronger position if Apple's changes encourage more businesses to conduct commerce on our platforms by making it harder for them to basically use their data in order to find the customers that are more that would want to use their products outside of our platforms. But the thing that I've been mostly focused on is that a lot of these changes are going to make it harder for small businesses and developers. And I think the situation is going to be challenging for them to navigate. And, I just think it's one of the reasons why Facebook has been a bit outspoken on this is, there are certain principles that we care about, and empowering individuals is one of them. And when I feel like, people are kind of pushing too far on one of these things, I just want to make sure that we go and stand up for the people we serve. So whether it's, a couple of years ago, I went and I wrote this speech and delivered it at Georgetown defending free expression, because I felt like that was something that was sort of under attack. Now I feel like the ability for small businesses and creators to have access to the same quality of tools as larger businesses have, without having to do all this analytics and stuff themselves, I think that's there are going to just be a lot of issues there that I'm quite worried about for the health of a lot of the businesses that we try to work with. But Toby, I mean, this is your zone too. I mean, I'm curious kind of what you're seeing and hearing from a lot of the small businesses that you work with. I mean, what are they telling you about the impact that they expect to see to their businesses?
Yeah. So I mean, it comes up a lot. Obviously, this is mostly about advertising, which isn't the only channel. Obviously, like everything we talked about in multi-channel, it's also true. But for the small and medium businesses, ads are the predominant way how they get sales, and those will become, less precise. I guess the general sense is, I mean, there's just a change fatigue. Everyone's like, okay, what does this mean now? They realize that it'll make some, it'll cause some, it'll make the ads just spend a little bit less effective. The thing I'm worried about the most, though, is that I've seen a lot of really, really great business. Some of our biggest customers start out as extremely niche products. Like it's when you do the Venn diagram thing, you have to like find the intersection between 5 different Venn diagrams. It's like people will like movies in the 80s culture and Pokemon and jewelry and all these other things. And that's again how they get a start. They then branch out from there later. And I think that specifically is going to be quite a lot bit harder to do in the future, which is a second order effect of what I think Apple is trying to do. It may not even be something like it may be something they haven't fully appreciated initially, but it's certainly something that's on the mind of the small and medium businesses.
Daniel, I know that you guys deal with this too, with the subscription stuff, where Apple doesn't actually let you point people to the web version to subscribe without their fee. So you kind of either have to just give them that subscription with that added fee, which often means you have to increase your own price, which seems pretty harsh for the end consumer, or you have to leave it up to them to figure out that they're not supposed to subscribe in the app and go find it. Like, how have you felt about that? It seems like that just doesn't have transparency in front of mind.
Yeah, I mean, just to take a step back, though, I think we've spent the better part of, I would say, the last 20, 30 years to argue net neutrality. And what's interesting is that most of that dialogue, I feel we fought long and hard over, and now we're in this new kind of platform war where these platforms, and in particularly iOS, is now closing down a lot of the things that we associate with the internet. And I think that's a very scary development. And we're talking about something where, again, this is the primary now device that people access the internet. And the amount of restrictions that's being put on that in terms of what kind of interactions apps or companies can have with its customers, it's pretty massive. So in the case of Spotify, not only is it that they want to incur a 30% tax on our users, which, by the way, it happens to be more than what Spotify itself gets, because we're paying out 70% of all of our revenues to the artists. But then on top of that, they go so far to try to limit the way we are actually communicating with our consumers, even outside of the app itself, via emails and other things. So I just think it's a very, very slippery slope. And my view is that this is very damaging, not only to Spotify, but the entire kind of broader ecosystem of app developers and creators. And this is also why we filed the formal complaint, about 2 years ago now in the EU for this particular matter. And that was not lighthearted from my side. This was something that I spent a lot of time thinking about, and I feel that we're at a very important inflection point to decide sort of the future on the internet. Is it going to be open or is it going to be closed? And this will be one of the major debates, I think, over the coming years.
And the fee for creators that Daniel was mentioning, it's not just for the artists that you serve. I mean, we've certainly had this dynamic as well, and we built a subscription product to help news publishers have subscriptions, and had to go back and forth for a very long time with Apple before they agreed to not basically put a 30% tax on that, long after we basically said that we were going to take no revenue share in that. We see dynamics like, I mentioned the Stars product with game streamers, and Apple takes a much bigger cut of that than anything that we take out of the money that these creators are getting. And we even saw a bunch of examples during the pandemic that I thought were especially tough, where we built a bunch of tools around people being able to make online events and things like that. And we didn't take any revenue share of that, just because we were trying to help these creators or small businesses help support themselves. And the 30% tax on that, before Apple finally backed down, I just thought was particularly tough. So I do think that this is a big issue.
Yeah, it seems like those microtransactions are really impeded by this, because there's something that you want to be able to make quickly and not have this sort of extra overhead, or even thought that like, oh, I'm not just giving to the creator, I'm giving to this, one of the biggest corporations in the world. And to me, especially around the ad stuff, I feel that the ad supported services are the lifeblood of the free internet. Like, I love that people around the world can use Google and Facebook's products for free, because they're subsidized by ad views in top markets like the US. I think that that's really important to making sure the internet doesn't become a place that's all pay for play and you have to have money to be able to do something. And I would love to hear, Mark, like, what do you think about a better path forward around advertising privacy, where the people feel like they've given active consent, but that we're not necessarily like scaring them into rejecting these things that could really help small businesses and actually make their experiences better. I personally like targeted ads better than completely random ads.
Yeah, well, look, we know that if you ask people, would you want your data used to help make your advertising experience more personalized, the vast majority of people are going to say yes, right? We know this because that's what the GDPR in Europe requires, and we've implemented this around the world, and that was the result that we got. But of course, if you build a prompt that's asking if you want an app to track you around without having any sense of explaining basically what value you're going to get from that, then obviously that's going to discourage most people from participating in that. But look, I think you're basically right. I think if you want to give everyone a voice and give everyone access to content, a lot of people can't afford very premium services, although people do pay for different things. And I think the kind of time tested model for that is having free services or free media that is ad supported. And I think people accept that, and a lot of people like that. And people get, for the most part, that if they're going to see ads, they want them to be relevant ads. And so you kind of have it from both sides, right? So from the consumer perspective, if people are going to see ads, they want them to be a good experience. From the small business and creator side, people just want to be able to reach the people that are actually going to be interested in what they're doing. There's the old advertising quote that when you advertise, you're wasting half of your money, you just don't know which half. But for the first time, the internet made it so that could be a bit more precise. And I think without some of this optimization, you just make it it's not financially viable for a lot of these folks who are upstarts to kind of get into it. So that's what I worry about going forward. But but I do think that we'll be able to, offer a number of folks a path forward. Hopefully we can create enough value so that even if you have someone that's kind of taking a 30% tax on it, you're still able to enable millions of creators and folks to create a good livelihood. And I'm still optimistic about the future. I just think it would be a lot better for a lot of folks if there were a little bit less of a tax there.
So I want to bring up Eric Medziakowski, who was the co-founder and CEO of Pebble, the smartwatch company that had a pretty tough time dealing with some of these policies around hardware, because I know Apple doesn't necessarily give third-party developers the same access to features or integrations with iOS that native hardware like its AirPods do. Eric, maybe you could talk about like how you felt about dealing with that, and what you think needs to happen going forward.
Yeah, thanks for inviting me up. We dealt with a whole bunch of stuff over the years with respect to getting Pebble, our smartwatch, to work on iPhones. I mean, it ranged from issues like we had an app store for Pebble. We wanted to be able to invite people to create apps, watch faces, and other kind of applets on the watch. And we got a lot of pushback from Apple because they didn't want us to be running an app store within our iOS app. Eventually, it just took kind of like what Mark was saying, takes like 3 to 6 months to work with Apple and to get through these very kind of like a lot of back and forth. So that slowed us down a lot. I think the biggest difference though between say Android and iOS is just how much more open the platform is for people to create new experiences and new interactions. So for example, on Android, when we were working on Pebble, we wanted to be able to let people say like reply to messages or reply to SMSs or reply to WhatsApp messages. And there's a great API on Android where you can just send responses to incoming notifications. But on iOS, we were just blocked at every turn. We had to go through some crazy hoops to get replies to say iMessage working, and we weren't fully able to kind of create a good experience. And then Apple comes along and builds the Apple Watch, which of course has native integrations into all of the APIs. And it was tough for us because we really wanted to create a great experience for our users, but we just were limited by these kind of OS limitations.
Yeah, so across the board, like, where do you guys think this needs to go? Like, what changes would you like to see made here so that it is a better and more even playing field for creators and developers?
Yeah, I mean, can I just echo Eric's point on the private APIs? I mean, I think that there's been, a lot of people have focused on, the iOS 14 ads changes and whether that's going to be an impact for our business, for example. And while it might make some kind of headwind, I mean, the reality is we make changes in our products all the time that, try to prioritize, health and well-being across the services and kind of reduce our revenue. So over the long term, I'm not actually, the iOS 14 business changes are actually not the biggest concern I have with Apple. The thing that I worry about the most are the private APIs, like Eric is saying. And you see this both on the software side and the hardware side, right? So for a product like Messenger on Android, people can make that their default SMS client in addition to sending messages. And on iPhone, you just can't have a different SMS client. That's not a thing that Apple allows. They give their own services, access to better and different APIs for doing video chat and for building something like a messaging service, where every other app needs to ask for notifications. Theirs start with notifications turned on. So there are all these ways, and that's just one example of one thing that we're doing. But where I think the access to private APIs and the differential between Android and iOS is really massive. But then you also get on the hardware side where I haven't seen as much written about this, but our experience is certainly aligned with what Eric said too, in terms of just integrating devices with iOS is really difficult, and I think that they do that on purpose. And they have things like AirPods where basically the main feature that allows them to sell it for some kind of huge amount of profit, is that it pairs well with the phone, because they have given themselves an API that any other headphone provider, basically it's much harder for the headphones to pair, and the AirPods pair in half a second, and anything else takes 8 seconds, and it's just not as good of an experience. If you're trying to build a watch, which we're exploring, as just we talked about the kind of the wrist thing. I don't call it a watch, but it's the basic neural interfaces work that our Facebook Reality Labs team demoed some of our research about today. A neural interface on the wrist. If you want that to integrate with a phone in any way, it's just so much easier on Android than iOS. So my guess is that this is an area where there probably should be a lot more focus, and I do think the private APIs are just something that makes it really difficult to have a healthy ecosystem.
I've got a quick suggestion for them if there's any Apple folks on the call. Enable side loading. If we were able to kind of create apps and really move quickly to kind of build new interfaces and new experiences, if there was a means of just inviting users to sideload the app rather than going through the main app store, I think that would eliminate a lot of these issues kind of in the short term.
Yeah, I think that I would love to see Apple come forward with a just a more collaborative take. It seems like you guys are kind of lobbing policies at each other, and instead of just sort of coming to the table and being able to find something that works for everybody. It seems like there is an opportunity to build something that gives that level playing field for anyone. Mark, any other final thoughts on what you'd like to see them do there before we move into our last topic of talking a little bit about audio apps?
I thought that was a lot. I'm curious what Daniel and Toby think.
Yeah, I mean, from my side, I think the key word here is just enabling choice, and having more of a level playing field. As someone who's competing with Apple, not just them offering a platform that's prohibitive and making it difficult. On top of that, they also have a music service in Apple Music, where it's the default option, and like Eric spoke about, and Mark as well, it's a default music player. They are going to change it in upcoming versions, but that's about 10 years after the fact. So obviously a lot of people have gotten used to having that as the default music app on the iOS ecosystem. I personally want to see an internet where every single piece of the stack is open for competition. So whether it be payments, whether it's being marketing solution, whether it's creative solutions, whether it's commerce solutions, really throughout the stack, you should earn your place. That's the most important piece for me, to try to create an environment, and that should be everything we spoke about, from enabling everyone on your platform to have access to the same APIs as you do. Certainly, if you're also creating apps as well that are competing with those providers, it's also allowing sort of free opportunity for those apps to communicate directly with their customers and not have that be intermediated by yourself. And then thirdly, in terms of the ability to monetize, we talked about advertising, but it's true in subscription too. The 30% tax. I mean, we used to have this in Europe. Actually, we used to have the telcos. We charged something equivalent to 30 to sometimes even 50% of whatever you wanted to offer as a way of monetization, and it obviously didn't lead to very much of mobile payments. And it turned out that it was only once we got to smartphones and were able to use credit cards as the underpinning to that, I think we made huge progress of enabling more and more commerce on the internet. But imagine if you could have paid with very low fees on text messages, where we could have been today.
Yeah, totally agree with that. And I really think, open is good. Open leads to a lot more experimentation. Again, this is funny. Every time I seem to be in a Clubhouse room with you, Josh, I give a shout out to the web browser, but it is just such an incredible thing that it exists. Like, I think it's worth saying that no web browser, if a web browser would have to be invented today, like it wouldn't make it through any app store, right? Like, and I think that's that's not good, but we have it. So luckily it's there. I think more competition on the infrastructure leads to better things for everyone who uses the internet, and everything that allows direct relationships leads to this kind of experimentation, leads to more businesses, leads to more direct relationships, leads to more entrepreneurship, and anything that helps people get their first sale is something that's very, very good, especially if it's on the terms of the entrepreneur.
Yeah, I love that. Okay, so we're doing this talk on Clubhouse right now, and it seems like, between the pandemic breaking our sense of acquaintanceship, the inability to sort of gather together, and just the fact that people might be a little bit exhausted with video over time. Being on camera takes a lot of emotional effort. I think we all get that like Zoom fatigue after a long day of meetings, and so would love to hear you guys talk a little bit about why audio is sort of popping off right now in terms of social audio. Daniel, obviously you guys have been propelling more traditional music for a long time, as well as moving more and more into podcasts. But Mark, why do you think this audio stuff is blowing up right now? And I know that you guys, well, reportedly you guys are building something more specific to the space. Would love to hear you talk anything about that.
Sure. Well, I feel a little silly talking about why audio is important when I'm in a room with Daniel. But overall, I think that I kind of have this theory of social apps that at the intersection of every medium and audience size, there is an interesting experience to build. So, you can think about kind of videos that are public, right? There's something interesting there. If you think about one-on-one, there's something interesting there. If you think about small groups, there's something interesting to do there. The same is true for text, right? Short form text, long form text, photos, gaming, all of these different types of mediums. And I think that that's certainly true for audio too. And it has a bunch of the advantages that you said, right? You don't have to, prepare. You don't have to look good before you kind of get on to go do a podcast or a Clubhouse or whatever it is that you're doing. You can walk around a lot more easily. No, I think that there are a lot of you can consume it without having to look at the screen and kind of do that in the background while doing something else. You multitask better. So there are a whole lot of advantages for it, but I think ultimately I think what Clubhouse is doing and has pioneered is really impressive and is going to end up being one of the modalities around audio. Live audio broadcast. You're going to have also, obviously, long form kind of consumption of pre-recorded, right? Whether that's music or podcasts, that's an important thing. And I'd love to do more and kind of integrating that content and partner with Spotify on that to create a good experience across the apps there. But I think Spotify builds great tools for that today. But then I think that there's a shorter form component to this too, where in most of these mediums, what you're seeing is there's sort of longer form video, shorter form video, longer form text, shorter form text. And I think that that's going to be true in audio too. So, the question is kind of what are the equivalents of that in audio? So overall, I think that this is going to be a pretty big space. The work that we're doing in this is trying to basically build out a bunch of the tools across the spectrum of how people would want to use audio, and there will be. I'm really excited about this. This is something that our teams have been working on, for a while. Since I think possibly even before the pandemic, but at least from very early on in it, experimenting with different stuff, and I'm quite excited to start rolling it out soon.
Yeah, you guys actually were building like a live audio feature back in 2016, which seems like eons ago now in the internet age. But I think when it was locked inside the news feed, it felt like it's so much harder to quickly sample a piece of audio compared to like a video or a photo where you can really quickly get a sense of whether you're interested in it. Same goes for text. And audio is just so much more difficult with that. That's why we haven't really seen like an Instagram of audio discovery. And so I think it sounds like what you really need to be building is new destinations or more sort of peer-to-peer mediums rather than those traditional just sort of like asynchronous broadcast mediums. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, I just think it's going to be all of these things, right? I mean, I think people are going to want to broadcast audio. They're going to want to save long-form audio and be able to play it in the background. And I think that there are going to be shorter form things and kind of more discovery oriented and kind of quick exploration. So I know there's a lot of different use cases here. I mean, the trick to building products is not sort of having just having a high level theory on where things are going, but as you say, it's the execution, right? And getting the details right and making it so that kind of everything adds up and makes sense. So that's why you can try things a few times before you get them to work, and you just keep learning until you can make it work. But I'm quite optimistic about the space, and I think that there's going to be a lot to do here beyond the products that exist today.
Yeah, I think a lot of people get the sense that this kind of social audio is all about these kind of talks, like these kind of big public speakers talking to a large audience, when I think one of the parts I'm most excited about is like the smaller social private rooms where suddenly you can seem to get on the phone with somebody that you might never call on the phone. Because I think there's so many people between like our 10th best friend and our 100th acquaintance that we don't get to talk to on the phone or have those sort of spontaneous interactions with, but we'd love to because we want to stay in touch with them, and that's especially hard right now. But Daniel, what are you thinking about this space? You guys are doing podcasts, but are you thinking of anything else around interactive audio or things that are more live?
Yeah, for sure. And by the way, it brought up some fun memories. I remember Mark and we first collaborated on social music, which is a form of social audio back in 2011. We launched we kind of launched Spotify in the US that way, actually, where it was pretty cool. Like if I was listening to music and Mark was on Facebook, you could kind of tap into and listen to exactly what I was listening to at that time. It obviously wasn't as smooth of an experience as you can imagine it today, but it was kind of the first inning of that. So it's definitely something we've been thinking about for quite some time, I think both Mark and I. But I mean, the way I look at it is, the internet is an audio, visual, and interactive medium. And so, as such, even as it comes to audio, it was bound to become interactive. And I think Clubhouse and all of those type of formats is a great way of creating an interactive format between people and in a discovery format. I think at Spotify, we deliberately have kind of framed our set of focus as towards creators who aspire to be or already are professional. So we are not trying to be a social network of some sort, but instead what we are interested in and what we're going to focus on is obviously creating more interactivity features between creators and fans. We think that there's a ton of work to do there, and not just casual users, but even the segmentations like we spoke about earlier between your true fans, your super fans, and allowing those new and novel ways to interact with you. So those are definitely things that we're thinking about, and I think Clubhouse has just shown to the world that audio can be interactive as well. And obviously I'm not surprised, but I think the fantastic thing is this has been something of a trend that's been going on now for quite some time. I believe, I don't have the data to back this up, but I believe that the AirPods may be one of Apple's all-time most sold devices next to the iPhone. And so if you think about that and just think about sort of ambient computing and the ability for people to consume more and more content now via their ears, because most of us are having these sort of white earbuds in for many hours per day. That's just an enormous opportunity, both for social experiences, but also for for consuming more content like podcasting, like music, and of course, some of that will also be interactive.
Yeah, it feels a bit like when phone screens got bigger and the network speeds got faster, suddenly video became a viable option and people started consuming a ton more of it. And now it seems like we're experiencing that with audio. Maybe we don't need the screen size and the bandwidth actually isn't that tough, but it's really that sense of not having to fiddle with a tangled set of chords in your pocket just to be able to listen to something for 30 seconds while you're in line. Instead, I'm excited to see content get cut down shorter and shorter so I could ask for a set of comedy clips about a current events topic or a quick news brief about something, or just like some natural poetry when I'm taking a nice walk in the woods. I think that there's such an opportunity for that short form part, especially if you do build in that AI discovery where you don't have to pick every time, but instead it can sort of queue that stuff up for you. And Daniel, I think I'm also really excited around curatorship, because I think when you get enough content, naturally you need that next layer of curators. And playlisters are incredible on Spotify, but it seems like there's sort of limited ability to interact with those playlisters, or for those playlisters to really understand who's listening to them and be able to build that second set of creators that are indirectly creating by helping other people find content to experience. Are you trying to build more for those curators as well as the creators?
Yeah, I mean, we're definitely trying to add more and more tools to allow you to be a better curator, if not on a social basis, at least for yourself. But we did also, during the pandemic, launch sort of an ability for you to share what you're currently listening on with your friends. And the way we did that was actually by just sharing a link. You can do that on any social network, or on Facebook Messenger, WhatsApp, or any of that, to your friends, and they can tune in and listen to exactly what you're listening to. So it's kind of a live playlist where you can interact around that, and your friends can suggest if they want to listen to other songs as well. So there's definitely inroads in terms of that, but the primary focus for us on the roadmap is just enabling you to be a much better curator